The UK Expansion Worker Visa is a part of the UK Global Business Visa Mobility routes, and as all other UK business mobility routes, it was born on 11th of April 2022. This particular visa is for someone who would like to establish a business, a UK presence in the UK. So this is for those who already worked overseas in a senior specialist worker role, and they would like to establish their presence in the UK. If the business is already trading, you'll need to apply under the UK Senior Specialist Worker. The UK Expansion Worker Visa replaces the Sole Representative Visa, however, with a very unique twist, and now it allows to bring up to 5 UK expansion workers under this route, which is really handy because sometimes the businesses expand so fast that it's not enough for one employee, even in a senior managerial position, to cope with the extension, with the growth. So in this video, I'm going to concentrate on the requirements which the applicants will need to satisfy. As always, we are going to concentrate on the procedure, on the suitability requirements and the eligibility requirements. As with all other UK business global mobility routes, this route is a points-based system route, and therefore we have 2 types of eligibility requirements: the points-based eligibility requirements and non-point-based eligibility requirements. So in this video, I'm going to explain what those are and how you can score the necessary points in order to succeed in this application. So let us begin. As with the majority of UK visa applications, all applicants will need to meet 3 requirements in order to succeed in their UK expansion worker visa application. And because in the majority of cases, the validity and the suitability requirements are the same for all types of applications, I'll start this video with discussing the eligibility requirements, because the eligibility requirements are always going to be different depending on the type of visa. And because the UK expansion worker visa is a points-based type of application, the eligibility requirements consist of 2 parts: the points-based requirements and the non-points-based requirements. So let us have a look at the points-based requirements first. All applicants will need to score 60 points in order to meet the points-based requirements part of the application. And these 60 points are spread between the 3 elements. So the sponsorship element, job at an appropriate skill level, and a salary at the required level. So let us have a look at the sponsorship requirement first. In order for the applicants to get 20 points for the sponsorship requirements, there are a number of things they will need to prove. First of all, the certificate of sponsorship will need to comply with the requirements of the Home Office. So on this certificate of sponsorship, there should be your name, your surname, and also the certificate of sponsorship, which is a digital document, should also confirm that you are sponsored under the UK expansion worker route. It should have the details of your job, the description, how much you're going to get, whether or not you're going to get any allowance as part of your salary package. And if the allowances are included, your sponsor will need to specify what those are. And the reason is very simple: a certain allowance will not be included into the salary calculations and therefore will not be included into the salary calculations. The next one is your pay details and when you intend to start your job. Very straightforward, basic things about your employment. And also there are some general rules which I would like you to know about with regards to the certificate of sponsorship. First of all, it cannot be older than 3 months from the date when you intend to apply, and your certificate of sponsorship can only be used once. So, for example, if you applied before and for whatever reason your application was refused, your sponsor will need to reissue a new certificate of sponsorship, even though it was refused on some other grounds, for example, because you didn't comply with the financial requirements. Still, the certificate of sponsorship cannot be used with the next application. The Home Office, when you are making the application, will be ensuring that the sponsor has not withdrawn their certificate of sponsorship, and of course, it should not be cancelled by the Home Office. So these were our certificate of sponsorship rules. And also there are certain requirements with regards to the sponsor. They have to be rated, registered and licensed by the Home Office. And the next one is, I call them the genuineness requirements. And this is all about ensuring that the sponsor has not created this particular job only for you to get a visa to the UK. So the decision maker will be ensuring that the need for this job does exist and it's not a sham one. So in other words, it was not created in order for you to come to the UK, and also that it meets the third party rules. So in other words, the sponsor has no intention to hire you to a third party who is not a sponsor to fill in position with that party, whether temporary or permanently, and also that it's not a work to undertake an ongoing routine role or to provide an ongoing routine service to a third party, regardless of the nature or length of any arrangements between the sponsor and that third party. The next element of the sponsorship requirement is that you need to satisfy the so-called sponsor group rules. So in other words, you need to prove that you have worked for the sponsor overseas unless you are a high earner. High earner is someone who intends to earn at least £73,900, and that is based on the 40-hour per week contract. And also the second exception, which applies to the 12 months rule, is if you are a Japanese national wishing to establish a UK branch or subsidiary of the sponsor group under the UK-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. And if you'd like to know more about these agreements, you're very welcome to go to my website, which is ukvisasuccess.com. And there I wrote an article about this route, and also I have provided you with the link to this particular agreement. And the last one is Appendix ATS requirement. Let me show you how you can check if this one applies to you. So when you go to your browser and you type Appendix ATS, the .gov.uk website is the one you need, and this is the one, this is the Appendix ATS. This appendix prevents the transfer of information and knowledge or technology which could develop, advance or support an advanced conventional military technology or weapons of mass destruction program or their means of delivery. So if you have intention of working in any of these occupation codes, this means that you will need to apply under Appendix ATS and submit it together with your UK expansion work visa. So these were our sponsorship requirements. If you meet all of them, you'll be able to score 20 points. Another one is for proving that your job will be at an appropriate skill level. So let me show you how you can check this. So when you go to your browser, you need to type Global Business Mobility, eligible occupations and codes. The first .gov.uk website is the one you need, and as you can see here, it contains a list of all eligible jobs for the Global Business Mobility visas. And so this is our UK expansion worker route, which is included here. You'll need to find the job title over here. For example, if you're applying as a mechanical engineer, in order for you to save your time, what you can do is just click Ctrl F and here insert mechanical engineer, and this is the code for this occupation. In addition to checking that your job is listed here at the Global Business Mobility Eligible Occupations and Codes list, the decision makers will also be ensuring that your employer has chosen the most appropriate occupation code, and your job description has not been twisted to reduce the going rate for the proposed salary, or simply because the one which they needed you for was not on this list. And they will be doing so by checking that you have the appropriate experience, skills, and there is a genuine need for that particular job. If this one is met, another 20 points will be scored. And finally, we have the salary at the required level requirement. The salary at the required level requirement consists of two parts. We have the general salary requirements, and also we have the going rate requirements. With regards to the general rate requirement, guys, you have to remember that it has to be at least £42,400 gross a year or above, and that is based on the 40-hour per week contract. So if you intend to work more than that, you should bear in mind that the Home Office will only include the first 48 hours into their calculations. And I would like to give you an example, because what I've discovered is that many people are confused with regards to how this is calculated. For example, John intends to work as a building service manager for ABC Building Service Limited. According to his employment contract, he will be working 60 hours a week at the rate of £15 per hour. And according to his contract, you may think that he meets the minimum salary requirements. And this is how we calculate this. So what we do, we take the 60 hours per week and then we multiply it by £15 per hour. And this is how we'll know that he will be getting £900 per week. And then we multiply it by 52 weeks a year. So this is how usually people work out the annual salary. So according to the details which you have in front of you, John's salary is supposed to be 46 hours and £800, and he can easily meet the £42,400 threshold. However, guys, this is not how the Home Office is going to calculate John's salary, and that is because they only take into the account the first 48 hours which he will be working. So let me show you how the Home Office is going to make these calculations. So what they're going to do, they're going to reduce the working hours, and this is solely for the purpose of calculating whether or not they met this general salary requirement. So what they're going to do is this. They're going to take the per hour rate and multiply it by only 48 hours per week. And then they're going to multiply this amount by 52, the number of weeks we have in a year. And this is going to be his actual salary for the purposes of meeting the salary at the required level requirements in order to be able to score 20 points. And therefore, you have to be careful. If your working hours are more than 48 hours per week, you should be aware that the Home Office is going to reduce your working hours to 48 only. And the second element of the salary at the appropriate level requirements is the going rate requirements. All you have to do in order to ensure that this is met is to check the table. So when you go to your browser, you need to type Global Business Mobility going rates, and then the .gov.uk website is the one you need. And as you can see, we have a table here which gives the rates for the UK expansion worker. So these are the going rates for the occupation. Here I draw your attention that it's quite tricky because this particular table is based on the 39-hour per week working week. So this means that if you intend to work more than 39 hours per week, then the Home Office is going to make the adjustments in order to see if you're still going to meet the going rate requirements. And I would like to show you now how the Home Office is going to make the calculations if your working week is going to be more than 39 hours per week. Okay, let's say we have Gwen who intends to work as a chief executive at, let's say, ABC Limited. Her employer intends to pay her £67,500 gross per year, and she intends to work 42 hours per week. So if we jump to the table we've discussed before, so she intends to work as a chief executive. So the occupation code for this particular application is going to be 1115. Her job title will be chief executive, and the going rate for the UK expansion worker visa is going to be £67,300. And you may think that this looks good because she intends to receive more than this amount per year, and therefore the going rate element of the salary at the required level requirements is met. However, it is not, and let me show you why. We know that the appendix skilled occupation, the going rate is based on 39 hours per week, and this means that the Home Office is going to adjust for the purposes of meeting this second element of the salary at the required level. They're going to make the adjustments to 39 hours per week. And we know that she works 48 hours. So what they're going to do, first of all, they're going to work out what her hourly rates are. In order for them to do this, they'll take the annual salary and then divide it by 52 weeks, which is how many weeks we have in a year. This will give us the amount she'll be earning per week, which is £1,298.07 per week. And then they're going to divide it by 52. As we know, Gwen is going to work a week. And this is how now we know that she's going to earn £30.90 per hour. And then they're going to take her hourly figure and multiply it by 39 hours per week. And that is because the going rates in the appendix skilled occupations are based on the 39-hour week. The amount in brackets is going to be the maximum amount the Home Office is going to consider for the purposes of calculating her weekly salary, and then they're going to multiply it by 52 weeks, and this is how they're going to come up with the annual salary for our Gwen, which is going to be £62,665 per week. And let us go back to the table. As you can see, the going rate for this particular occupation is more than that. And unfortunately, in this particular example, despite the fact that according to her contract she's going to earn £67,500, although it's going to meet the general salary requirement, it's not going to meet the going rate requirement. Therefore, guys, just remember, for the purposes of calculating the general salary requirements, only the first 48 hours are going to be included into calculations. And for the purposes of calculating if the applicant meets the going rate requirements, only 39 hours per week will be taken into consideration. So if after you've done your calculations, you still believe that you meet the salary at the required level requirements, you will be able to score your final 20 points. If you manage to score 20 points for the sponsorship, 20 points for the job at the appropriate skills level, and 20 points for the salary requirement, this means that you will be able to meet all 60 points for the points-based requirements. And the next one is the non-points-based requirements, and they're very simple. They consist of only two parts. We have the financial requirements and the maximum length of the assignment requirements. Not all people need to meet the financial requirement. You will meet the financial requirements automatically if your sponsor decided to sponsor you and support you during your first months of living here in the UK. If they intend to do so, they will need to mention in their certificate of sponsorship that they will be your sponsors and they will be paying you at least this amount, £1,270 for the first months. And secondly, you don't need to meet the financial requirements, or you would be deemed to have met this automatically if you already remained in the UK with the permission to stay. So if you had a valid visa and you have lived in the UK for at least 12 months. In these circumstances, the Home Office will not be checking if you meet the financial requirements, and you would be considered to have met this automatically. If this doesn't apply to you, this means that you will need to meet the financial requirements. And in order for you to do so, you have to show that there was at least £1,270 in your bank account for the last 28 days. And the end date of the 28 period must be within 31 days of the date when you apply. So this was our very straightforward financial requirements. And then we have the maximum length of assignment requirements, which simply means that you cannot stay in the UK for more than 5 years in any 6-year period of time. And when calculating the number of years you have stayed here, the Home Office will be taking into consideration the amount of time you spent here under all global business mobility routes and all intra-company transfer routes. These were our points-based requirements. If you have met them, this means that the eligibility requirements are met. Let us very briefly have a look at the validity requirements. They consist of two parts, the procedural part and the switching part. The switching rules only apply to you if you are making your in-country application, and you cannot switch to the UK expansion worker visa if you stay here as a visitor or as a short-term student or as a parent of a child student or as a seasonal worker or as a domestic worker in a private household, or if your previous application was made outside the immigration rules and it was granted. If you in the UK in any of these categories, this means that you'll need to go back to your country and reapply from outside, or in other words, this is known as making your entry clearance application. With regards to the procedure, you'll need to complete the online form and you will need to pay the fee. The visa fee is reasonable, it's £259. All applicants will be required to pay their immigration health surcharge, For the main applicant, it's going to be £624. For kids, if they apply as dependents, it's going to be less. It's going to be £470 per year. And then the sponsor will need to pay for the certificate of sponsorship, which is £199 plus £536 for the sponsor license. Then as part of the application, you will need to submit your passport to prove your identity, nationality and age. All applicants will have to be over the age of 18. You'll also need to submit other supporting documents with the application. The next step is to submit biometrics, which is a scan and a photo of your face as well as your fingerprints. And if, guys, your country is on Appendix T list and you were either resident for more than 6 months in one of those countries or you're a national of these countries which is on Appendix T list, this means that you'll need to submit your tuberculosis test certificate together with the application if this is an entry clearance application. So if you're making your application in the UK, you don't need to submit these certificates. So that was our procedural part. If you are not caught by the switching rules and you have complied with the procedure, this means that you will meet the validity requirements. And once again, the decision makers will start with considering whether or not you meet the validity requirements. If you don't, then this means that the application will be considered as invalid. The suitability requirements. The suitability requirements are very simple. They're there to ensure that you are of good character. This is a very simplified understanding of the suitability requirements. So to check if you meet the suitability requirements, you have to jump to Part 9 of the immigration rules and open Section 2, which gives you a very long list of the suitability requirements. As you can see, we have the requirements: grounds for refusal if someone had a exclusion or deportation order, or on criminality grounds, or if someone was excluded from asylum, or if there was a sham marriage application before, or if someone made false representations. So just jump to Part 9 and check if any of the suitability requirements apply. And if they do, and provided this is not a mandatory grounds for refusal, so mandatory ground for refusal is when we see this word must. So for example, if you have an exclusion or a deportation order, unfortunately, if you make your application, it will be refused. So the decision maker has no choice and they have to refuse your application. However, if you see this word may, this means that the decision maker can still exercise their discretion. However, when you are making your application and if you believe that you are caught by one of the discretionary grounds for refusal, please write a letter in support of your application and explain why the decision maker has to exercise a discretion in your favor. And so this is Part 9, and all applicants from outside the UK will need to meet Part 9. If someone makes the application in the UK, in addition to proving that they meet Part 9 of the immigration rules, they have to be lawfully present in the UK. So in other words, their visa has not expired when they made the application, unless they can prove that exceptions at paragraph 39E apply. So let me give you an example. Let's say your visa expired a couple of days ago and you could not submit your application before because you were admitted to hospital in an emergency room and therefore you could not submit your application on time. In these circumstances, you can try and rely on exception of paragraph 39E. So what you need to do in these circumstances, you need to make your application as soon as possible, but no later than 14 days after the expiry of your visa. And with this application, you have to explain that you have not submitted your application before because there were some exceptional circumstances beyond your control which prevented you from making your application on time. If the Home Office accepts that these grounds were beyond your control and it was a good reason for not applying on time, you will be covered by exception of the paragraph 39E. If not, unfortunately, the application will be refused because the general rule is that you have to be remaining lawfully in the UK in order to submit your UK expansion worker visa application. And secondly, you should not be on immigration bail when you're applying from the UK. So these were our suitability requirements. If all validity, suitability and eligibility requirements are met, this means that the application will be granted. If the application was not successful, unfortunately, there is no right of appeal against the adverse decision. However, you can still apply for an administrative review. There will be certain rules with regards to how long you can stay here. You'll get the shortest of the following form.
So it's either 1 year after the start date of the job detailed in your certificate of sponsorship, or 14 days after the end date of the job date on your certificate of sponsorship, or the date at which you have had a continuous permission to remain here as a UK expansion worker. The next one is the date at which you will have had a continuous permission as a UK expansion worker totaling 2 years. And finally, the date at which you will have had a cumulative permission under the Global Business Mobility route or as an intra-company transfer applicant totaling 5 years in any a 6-year period of time. And as with all other visa applications, there will be certain conditions imposed on your stay. So you'll be allowed to work only for your sponsor. You will be allowed to study. Your spouse and your children under the age of 18 will be allowed to join you. You can do some voluntary work and you can travel abroad. With some exceptions, you cannot claim benefits and you cannot work for another employer, do any other job. And this particular route doesn't lead to settlement. So you cannot apply for indefinite leave to remain. And these were the requirements which you'll need to satisfy in order to succeed in your UK expansion worker visa application.